You're listening to Autumn on the Air, the weekly podcast that brings you conversations about the impact of research commercialization and the people who make it happen. Join us for interviews with patent and licensing professionals, innovators, entrepreneurs, and tech transfer leaders on the issues and trends that matter most. Keep listening for an inside track on the people, IP policies, and politics changing our world.
Welcome to another episode of Autumn on the Air. Each year, Americans observe National Hispanic Heritage Month from September 15th to October 15th by celebrating the histories, cultures, and contributions of American citizens whose ancestors came from Spain, Mexico, the Caribbean, and Central and South America. Today, we're kicking off our Hispanic Heritage Month series with Dr. Jose Morey, the founder of Ad Astra Media, where he provides role models and educational STEAM, or science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics, content to encourage more diversity in STEAM-related fields. Dr. Morey has left an indelible mark on the world of STEAM education, biotechnology, AI, and aerospace. His career includes serving as Chief Medical Officer for Ever Medical, advising NASA, Forbes, and MIT, and holding leadership roles, including his current role as LISTA National Chair at TechLatino, where he continues to drive positive change and empowerment in the Hispanic tech community. Welcome, Dr. Morey. I'm so excited to have you here on the air.
Oh, thank you so much, Lisa. I really appreciate it. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I'm very excited to have you here. And I thought maybe the best way to kick the podcast off was, I mentioned during the intro that you're the founder of Astra Media, LLC, which provides role models and educational STEM content. So I'm curious, can you take us back a little bit to how this all got started, as well as what drives your commitment to encourage diversity in the STEAM fields?
Sure. So I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on again, and thank you for the opportunity to talk about my journey and my career. So at Astra Media, it was named after something that astronauts tend to tell each other a lot. I've worked as a consultant for NASA previously in my career for several years, and it means to the stars. So it's something that they would say to each other. So that's really what we're looking to do with Ad Astra Media, is to inspire kids to shoot for the stars, to dream about the things that they can be, particularly around science and technology. And the reason I decided to start the company was because although I have had many experiences within science and technology and been able to work with amazing institutions, amazing organizations, and work on some really cool projects over my career. Oftentimes, I was the only Latino that was working on many of these projects, especially as I moved up the executive level. And then sometimes I'd be the only person that came from any underrepresented group on many of these projects. And a lot of these things, especially in science and technology, the STEM or STEAM related fields, they're the ones that are generating the greatest amount of generational wealth. And if you don't have kids from underserved communities, underrepresented communities involved in developing these technologies, then you have a twofold problem. One is that these technologies that are being developed could potentially exacerbate systemic inequalities that have existed or pre-existed for many years. And you have kind of a shutting out of creating new wealth for the future generation from kids from these communities. And so when I had the opportunity to start going out and talking to kids from high school, grade school, middle school, throughout my professional career, I'd ask kids, who was it or what was it that they were dreaming about being when they grew up, or who they followed on social media, what kind of people were motivating them and inspiring them and causing them to dream about the things that they could be. And it was always, a lot of the kids from these communities want to be, especially, I'm from Puerto Rico, want to be maybe musicians, maybe reggaetoneros. They want to be maybe, baseball players, basketball players. And that's fine and great, but the reality is that it's much easier to make 1,000 doctors or 1,000 nurses than it is to make 1,000 Bad Bunnies. And no shade to Benito, I love Benito, and I love what he does for our community and all the other artists and athletes. But the reality is that if we can get kids from our communities to be dreaming about STEM and STEAM fields, if we can get them to start all making, 6-figure jobs, then that is true economic power. And with true economic power comes true political power. And ultimately, those are the things that we're trying to do, is inspire kids from our communities to go into the fields that are creating this generational wealth that will give economic power to our communities.
And, you've been a prominent figure in exponential technology innovation, and it's obvious you've worn so many hats during your career. You mentioned consulting for NASA, but you've also served as a health and technology keynote speaker. So can you talk a little bit about how these diverse experiences have shaped your perspective on the importance of diversity in tech and the STEM industries?
Yeah, 100%. The reality is that there is no job that's not going to be touched or has not already been touched by technology in some capacity. Every job in the future is going to be tech-enabled. And the reality is that these technologies can exacerbate inequalities that already exist. For example, let's take artificial intelligence since it's a very popular topic right now. But if our data, people from underserved communities aren't included in these data sets, or if the data that is included comes from systemically biased structures or data sets, then that can potentially perpetuate inequalities. And there's been lots of examples, real world examples of this already occurring. I'll give you a few. One, there's been a lot of AI applications for healthcare to determine reimbursement and practices of healthcare administration. And I've been a part of developing a lot of AI applications within healthcare. So this is something that I deal with on a lot of levels and many occasions. And a lot of these applications they've shown would tell the organization to not reimburse or not do a particular treatment plan, particularly for people from underserved communities, so Black and Brown people. And when they were looking at that, one of the reasons that it was doing that is because it was looking at zip code data or other data that influences outcomes. And so those things come from things like redlining and Jim Crow laws, and understanding that those data sets, if utilized, can perpetuate those inequalities is really, really important. Another example, there's a great documentary out there called Coded Bias, where they talk about facial recognition software, which uses a lot of machine learning, a lot of data sets to analyze that's used in law enforcement to be able to predict that someone might be a potential suspect in some case. So it analyzes the person's face as it walks by, and then it kind of gives an alert to the law enforcement officials. Used all over the world, and the documentary covers a prominent doctor from MIT. Her name is Joy Bolawini, and she was trying to create an application using the facial recognition software for something new that she was experimenting with. And she bought all the over-the-counter or off-the-shelf facial recognition software, so the ones from IBM, from Google, and others. And what she found was every time she's very dark skinned, and every time she would put her face in front of the camera, it'd always say no face identified, no face identified. And she really didn't understand what was happening because she tried all the different applications and none of them were identifying her face. And then she happened to have this face mask, those white face masks that looks like a Mardi Gras mask that she had in her office. And when she put it on, then the facial recognition software would identify that there was a face there. And what she found was when she looked at the data sets to see as to what the data was saying or where it was being trained from, like 95% and greater came from white men. So it was just white male data sets that were being used for the facial recognition software. So that's why it wasn't trained. And then the thing is that these law enforcement other research has been done for at least law enforcement AI applications, and they tested one of them on the Congressional Black Caucus, so Congress people within the United States, and it identified something ridiculous, like over 90% of them, and identified them as potential criminals because the small data sets that were being used from Black and brown people were actually criminals. So that's all the data it had to go along. So it was misidentifying incorrectly potential people as criminals when they were not. So those are the reasons why it's important for us to have diverse folks at the table developing these technologies, because if you do not, then these types of things can occur. And when we're having these types of applications determining, who gets healthcare, who does not, who gets a loan, who does not, who may be a criminal, who may not, these are life-changing and life-altering things. And I often give the example, if Nazi Germany developed an AI application, what do you think it would have taught the AI? What would it have said about Black and brown people, or about Jewish people, or about gay people? So it's understanding that the technology itself is not biased, but when you're developing technology on biased data, then it can perpetuate those problems. So we really need diverse people. And in the Coded Bias documentary, they went back and looked at, all right, well, who was it that was developing these? And if you looked at the teams were primarily just white men. So it just goes to show you that it's important because everyone has blind spots. Everybody has unconscious biases that they kind of they're just not thinking about it, and there's nothing. It's just not in their purview because they've never had to deal with it. So, and that's fine. But the reality is that we have to be honest, all of us, that we have these biases, and bring a diverse group of people to the table when developing these advanced technologies. So that's number one. But the number two is this economic generational wealth development. The fact that if we continue to leave people out of these fields, especially people from underserved communities, it's just going to perpetuate, economic and social disparities. And we're seeing consequences of that. It's multifactorial, but with the homelessness that's increasing in the United States and in other places, we need to make sure that everyone, there's enough wealth to go around for everyone. It needs to not be so centralized. It needs to be able to elevate communities and be able to create safety nets. So we need to make sure that we have everyone at the table so that everyone is being fed.
Absolutely. I think you said that very, very well. And, I think that is a good segue into, this is the kickoff for our Hispanic Heritage Month series. And it's a time to celebrate the contributions of Hispanic individuals in various fields. So, Dr. Morey, I wanted to ask you, how can we inspire more young Hispanics to pursue careers in tech transfer and STEAM?
I think it's multifactorial. It depends, obviously, on the age group. One of the things that we're doing at Ad Astra Media is really focused on creating entertaining stories, creating heroes, heroines that look like people that come from our community. So creating those storylines of what kids can be, planting the seeds that will turn into their dreams, that will eventually turn into their realities. That is what we're doing. So one of the things that we are doing, we need more help with, not just helping us directly, but other people doing the same thing of creating content. You can see the movies like Million Miles from Home, Encanto, all these films that show representation, all this media that shows representation, these things truly matter. These things truly cause kids to dream about what they can be and shape how they view themselves, how they view the world sees them, and how they view their opportunities. We cannot underestimate the power that media has on all of us. The media shapes all these things, not just for children, but it shapes it for adults as well. So putting more content out there that shows representation of BIPOC, Latinx, Latino people that are scientists, that are entrepreneurs, that are engineers, that are doctors, nurses, etc. That truly changes the storyline for our community and for our people. And those things are vitally important. We have to be not just telling fictional stories that shows that representation, but we also have to be telling non-fictional stories, real world stories of people from our community that are doing these things, that are out there. It's not like we do not exist. We are doing these things, we are driving innovation forward. We are driving the economic engine of the United States forward, of the world forward, and we need to continue to be telling these stories. And at the end of the day, if we don't tell our stories, who will? So that's one thing that can be done. Another thing is mentorship. We need to do much better with mentorship, with aligning kids that are in high school, college, with mentors that look like them, come from their communities, that can reach out, that can pull up and then push up as they transition and move through their professional careers.
Yeah, and I do want to let our listeners know, I mean, I did check out your website and I thought it was really clever the way you're trying to reach out to these kids, because you talked about the fictional stories and the non-fictional stories. And, you know, what's really hot now with kids is kind of the comic book, kind of graphic novels, and the way you're doing it on your website, where you're creating this content with kind of the comic book type of approach, which is what, like I said before, what kids are really into. And then I think supplementing that with non-fictional stories is the way to go, because you kind of grab them in with that comic book type of approach, and you get them kind of hooked, to use a fishing analogy, and kind of, you know, pique their interest and kind of keep developing and adding on to that from there.
Yeah, 100%. That's exactly our mission and our drive. Because at the end of the day, especially when you're trying to reach kids from K to career, you really need to have something that's entertaining and engaging and that meets them where they are. So that's where we focus with our content, whether it's our children's books, whether it's our graphic novels and comics, or whether it's our animated series or TV and film, or even gaming that we create. All those things. That's, kids are really engaged in multimedia platforms. So we're creating content that will hook them, and the diversity, equity, inclusion is just in the background. It's just happens to be that it's a Latina engineer that's the protagonist, but the story is not about necessarily her. Everything else is sprinkled in. It's really about the amazing world that she lives in, the story, the expansiveness of the universe. Things that kids already love and dream about. And the reality is that the content that we create is for everyone. It's for kids that come from Latino communities, but it's also for kids that don't, because it's important for everyone to be acclimated to, hey, no matter what you look like, no matter how you speak, no matter what your hair looks like, no matter what your skin is like, no matter where you were born, you belong in any place that you believe that you belong. If you want to be a doctor, if you want to be an engineer, you want to be an astronaut, you want to be a computer scientist, you can do those things.
Absolutely. So, Dr. Morey, you're a Hispanic leader in technology and innovation. What would you say are some of the unique perspectives and strengths that the Hispanic professionals bring to the tech transfer and STEM sectors?
I would say it really comes from our heritage. Latinos and Hispanics are very community-centered, very family-centered. So they tend to bring people to the table. It's all about this concept that if one can eat, we all can eat. So it comes from a place of abundance. Whenever we're building community, wherever we're building industry, we bring that sense of community and familia to the work that we are doing. There's also a great respect for multi-generational work. So working with, tus abuelos, tu abuela, abuelita, working with your parents, working with the kids, and really transferring and mentorship. In our communities, there's a lot of storytelling, and really storytelling is about community building and mentorship of the next generation. So we bring that into the different things that we do. So we bring more folks to the table, and really that is it's our superpower, because the data shows that companies that are more diverse, especially at the top, tend to do better because of the diversity of thought, because you have people that are looking at the same problem, but because of their multifactorial strengths of coming from a diverse community, they don't solve that problem the same way. They solve it from different perspectives. And then when everyone's at the table discussing, well, I think this is the best solution, or I think this is the best solution, then you essentially get the best solutions out there together, and then you take what's best from each one, and then the ultimate or penultimate solution ends up being better. then, if you had everyone that was only a Stanford grad that only came from one socioeconomic status, one ethnicity, one background, one state, whatever, that's really where there's a great strength. The other major aspect is a lot of our communities tend to be matriarchal as well. And that's always shown to be a strength in industry. The data sets always show that companies that are women-led tend to fare much better than companies that are male-led. And that's, again, multifactorial reasons as to why that is. But our community tends to be very matriarchal. That tends to be the foundation for our community. I think it's a strength that we bring to the table as well.
Absolutely. And I hope everyone, you mentioned if one can eat, all can eat. And if we all just took that message forward, just think about how much better the world would be if we all thought that in that way. Yeah.
And I get that from my abuela who passed many years ago, but she wasn't very wealthy. And regardless of that, she always was thinking about others, and didn't matter how little she had, she always said that she had enough to give away. And that's something that I've always taken with me. And it's something that has been a driver in the things that I do.
Yeah, it should resonate with all of us, and the world would be much better off if we all acted in that way. So what a role model. So Dr. Morey, I wanted to ask you, as the podcast comes to a close, looking ahead, could you share with us or give us a glimpse of some of the exciting projects or initiatives that Ad Astra Media has in store for the future?
Absolutely. No, and thank you for asking. So yeah, if everyone can follow along on our social media channels, we're most active on Instagram as well as on our website. And people can join our mail listserv, and you can keep up on a quarterly basis with what we're doing. But we have a lot of fun things, a lot of fun content that's coming out. We have constantly new comics in our Intergalactic Academy comic that is dropping every month. So you can follow that.
It's really neat. Yeah. I looked at it. It was really fun.
Thank you very much. And it's available in English and in Spanish. We have a new book coming out in our Good Night Little series, which I can't announce what the title is yet, but stay tuned for that. We have a new teen book that's coming out called Terror Warriors. So it's kind of like a modern day Captain Planet with a diverse group of kids that each get a power depending on what climate they protect. So it's a lot about sustainability, about climate change,
awesome.
And how kids from diverse communities can help support that.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Morey. And that brings us to the end of this episode. And this was really a fantastic way to kick off Hispanic Heritage Month. Again, Dr. Morey, thank you so much for joining us today and talking to us about Ad Astra Media, LLC.
My pleasure, Lisa. Thank you so much.
And to our listeners, please be sure to stay tuned for more inspiring stories during our Hispanic Heritage Month series.
Thanks for listening to Autumn on the Air with Lisa Mueller. Get social with us and share your thoughts. You can tweet us at AUTM or visit us online at AUTM.net. We'll be back next week on the air. Be sure to join us.